In 1988, Michael Dukakis, the Democrat, was ahead of George H.W. Bush by 17 points until the Republicans pulled this dirty trick. How do we prevent this from happening this year? Check it out. Leave your comments, ding the bell, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. The election of 1988. Mike Dukakis, the Democratic governor of Massachusetts, and generally regarded as a good and decent man, who was not, some sort of flaming liberal. He was somewhat progressive, but, by today's standards, you would consider him a corporate or a conservative Democrat. But generally regarded as a pretty decent guy. Was running against George Herbert Walker Bush, the vice president in the Reagan administration. And now everybody's making, like, oh my God, everything's wonderful. Look at this. Donald Trump is being beaten by Joe Biden by 11 points, by 12 points, by 9 points, by 13 points, in all these polls. You know how far Dukakis was ahead of George Herbert Walker Bush just a few weeks before the election in 1988? Just a few weeks. 17%. He was totally kicking ass. 17%. And then, of course, what happened? George Bush started running ads prepared by Lee Atwater that showed a black killer and rapist, Willy Horton, and falsely lying. I mean, literally lying. Willy Horton had been released under a program that was started by the previous governor, who was a Republican. Michael Dukakis had nothing to do with it. But the ads that Lee Atwater and George H.W. Bush's campaign put together argued that it was Mike Dukakis, the governor of Massachusetts, who let this black rapist and killer out of prison. And of course, he then raped and murdered a young white woman. And oh my God! And we got George Herbert Walker Bush as president. So let us not rest on our laurels, huh? Let us not think we've got this thing in the bag. Number one. Number two, I'm curious, what do you think is the number one lie that Donald Trump has told out of the roughly 20,000 lies he's told in the last 3.5 years? What do you think? What is number one in your book? Just curious. I'll tell you my nominee for that in our third hour. A few other things in the news that I think are worth A, you knowing, and B, my mentioning, so that we can talk about them today if you choose.